he gets access to in Legacy are so much better, specifically Invigorate and Berserk. Those two cards in concert with one another cause any 1 power infect creature to be lethal because it's 1 + 4 = 5 times 2 = 10.
Merriam, he's 7-1-1. He is playing combo elves as he always does. Gonna start by going to 19 off the Verdant Catacombs. We'll see what 1-drop he's going to play. It's going to be a Heritage Druid. You see Ross on his side. He has a Noble Hierarch. This card was kind of adopted in the modern version around the Pro Tour in Seattle. The Days will take care of the Heritage Druid, but the fact that it gives you a little bit more mana and pumps your infect creatures with Exalted, really powerful stuff.
And a big issue that Ross is going to have in this matchup is the fact that he does not have a way to stop Blighted Agent. So if Tom has Blighted Agent, as he does, with any sort of support, Ross is going to be hard-pressed to win the game. He has to win very quickly now.
Yeah. And there is the Blighted Agent on turn number 2. So, of course, the unblockable threat means whatever elves Ross does play, as impressive as they may be, they're not blocking, as there's a Heritage Druid. He does have a Cradle. He's going to follow it up with a copy of Birchlore Rangers. Now, of course, Merriam, number 28 on our leaderboard, going to tap the Birchlore Ranger and the Alpha player Wirewood Symbiote. See if he has another follow-up. He's just going to pass the turn back. Very capable with elves. We've seen him top 8 Invitational in Atlanta a couple years ago. He's had a lot of success in the Open Series. He's even won an Open Series with Delver before. So we see him in the top 8s quite a bit. Here's a Gataxian Probe from Ross, targeting Merriam. Another copter of Wirewood Symbiote, an Elvish Visionary, and a Natural Order.
And for those of you who are not that familiar with Legacy, Ross is certainly capable of winning the game next turn. So both players have to get a move on here. And assume Tom is aware of this fact and he's digging for some way to finish the game this turn.
See, Brainstorm's going to give you a Sylvan Library, a Blighted Agent, and I believe a Berserk are the 3 cards. And you also see Ross's handy looking at a Vines of the Vastwood and some other spells, among them a Stifle. So it doesn't look like he's going to get the kill this turn, and he does have to be wary of what can happen on the next turn for Merriam. Maybe that Stifle can mess some things up.
It's going to have to because Thomas is very unlikely to get to his next turn. As Natural Order for Craterhoof Behemoth with all the mana that Merriam can generate.
But that could be where the Stifle comes in. You stifle the Craterhoof Behemoth trigger, so that could get the job done there. So that one Stifle, assuming that Ross has kept it in his hand, can make things difficult as Merriam is going to untap his permanents. He's going to take a draw here. And we'll see what he can put together. You see Tom's going to take a look at Wirewood Symbiote. We're going to do the exact same. That's the insect in the deck. Return elf you control to its owner's hand. Untap target creature. Play this ability only once each turn. Arguably the most powerful card in this deck.
Oh, it's very. I believe this and Gaia's Cradle are the 2 most powerful cards in the deck. Glimpse is up there as well. For those of you who are wondering why Tom is playing with Stifle, this deck essentially gets some flex slots that it gets to add for Disruption because the combo itself doesn't require that many deck slots as your infect creatures plus some pump spells. So he has 2 copies of Stifle in this deck alongside 2 Force of Wills and 4 Dazes. These numbers have changed from time to time.
Ross going to play our Wirewood Symbiote off of the Bayou, then he's going to tap the Cradle for 4 mana. He's going to get a Craterhoof Behemoth off a Natural Order. Tom is going to have a response. He's going to sacrifice that Misty Rainforest, presumably search out a tropical island, which he does get. And it's time to stifle that big behemoth trigger, because if he didn't, he'd be dead ski.
He'd be way over dead.
Yeah. So you do see Craterhoof Behemoth. It'll still come into play. It'll still be a 5/5 haster and can still get its attack on, but Tom is going to take a bunch of damage as opposed to being dead. And there is your Stifle on the trigger there from Craterhoof.
Another cool element of Tom Ross's Infect deck, if you haven't seen this before, is crop rotation for Inkmoth Nexus. So he can actually win the game from no board. If you pass, assuming that it's safe, he just has some lands in play and no creatures, he can kill you from that spot.
It's a very dangerous deck to play against, as now Merriam's Craterhoof Behemoth has been stifled. Now he's got to consider what he should do on this turn, because it would have been a lethal attack, but that Stifle really messed everything up. So you see Ross thinking, all right, how am I supposed to attack now? Is there anything else I can do? Because that one-trick pony is kind of gone.
Yeah, he can't blot this Blighted Agent either, so he's just got to cross his fingers and hope that he gets next turn.
Yeah, because this isn't really a scary spot to be in. Just Blighted Agent and a bunch of cards in hand, and he just shuffled off of a Brainstorm. No big deal.
Odds are very high that Ross will not survive.
See Ross doing a bunch of math here. The problem here for him, obviously, is that he can't block the Blighted Agent, so he has to figure out how much he can attack with. If he's supposed to use Bursal Rangers to maybe tap for some mana to put another threat into play, he's going to put another copy of Wirewood Symbiote into play. Here's an attack here for 6 points of damage. Five from the Behemoth, 1 from the Insect. It's going to put Ross down to 13. Excuse me, down to 11. I apologize, as Ross will untap. He'll take a draw. Glistener Elf. There's a Vines of the Vastwood. And now there's a Berserk.
So that's 1 + 4 times 2 is 10. Didn't even need the full 10 as Ross already had 2 Infect on him, and so an easy game 1 for Tom.
Tom the Boss Ross wins game number 1 with, in fact, a little bit of a smile on his face. His Blighted Agent, plus a couple pump spells, going to get the job done. We don't see Berserk a lot, but when we do, obviously, it's pretty good.
Yeah, Tom played 1 copy in his list in Atlanta and had 1 in the sideboard. He's moved to 2 in the main deck. Makes a lot of sense. You can't draw that many Berserks because you need your +4/+4 pumps, whether it be Vines or Invigorate, to actually kill someone alongside Berserk. But Berserk is so powerful in concert with those cards that he decided to move the second one into the main deck.
It's sideboard time. I'm going to take a look at Ross Merriam's first. We'll see 3 Cabal Therapies, 3 Thought Seizes, 3 copies of Abrupt Decay, a Scavenging Ooze, a Gaddock Teeg, a Natural Order, a World Spine Worm, a Progenitus, and a Singleton Armageddon. I like it, Ross. He's got discards, 6 of them. And how do you feel about discard spells in this particular matchup to kind of break up some things?
Well, there's only so many of these type of effects that Ross can bring in these matchups because he still has to leave a critical mass of creatures to make, Natural Order and Glimpse of Nature a thing. So in my mind, he has to kind of decide between the Cabal Therapy Thoughtseize slot and the 3 Abrupt Decays. He may be better served bringing in Abrupt Decay as he's really short on answers to Blighted Agent. Okay. But again, we shall see.
The other option, of course, is Abrupt Decay, 3 of those in his sideboard for Merriam to bring in against the creatures. I think those are auto-includes. They'll take care of Blighted Agent, they'll take care of Hierarch, they'll take care of Glistener Elf. They obviously won't get the job done against Inkmoth Nexus, but you can't solve everything.
Yeah, and the Inkmoth Nexus kill is generally a lot slower than Blighted Agent, assuming that Blighted Agent is uncontested, which it is game 1 in this matchup.
On Tom Ross's side?
2 copies of Submerge, a Bajuka Bug, 2 Flusterstorms, 4 Nature's Claims, a Viridian Corruptor, a Dismember, 2 Force of Wills, and 2 Necropedes. I don't exactly know what matchup Necropede is for in general, but I have to imagine it's good against Elves, and we'll be seeing that one come in. I do like the additional copies of Force of Will, as he's basically trying to keep Ross off of whatever his big spell is. And I do like the copy of Dismember and the 2 Submerges as well. So he has a lot of disruption. I'm not sure how many of these slots he really wants to commit to these plans, but he does have some flex slots, 2 copies of Cataxian Probe, a Sylvan Library. He doesn't necessarily want his Fortezes on the draw, so I don't know how much of this room he really wants to make for all these cards, but he definitely has a lot of cards in his sideboard to play around with.
If you guys are just joining us at home, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Star City Games Open Series here, featuring the Invitational. Last event of Season 1, my friend.
Yep, we are finally drawing to a conclusion here. 2 invites to be given out. 1 for the Invitational Champion and 1 for the Season 1 point winner. And it looks like that second invite's all but locked up.
Yeah, Brian was just really ruining the drama of maybe Huey stealing it or Brad Nelson. Brad sitting at 6-3. Huey out of the tournament. He's playing in the Standard Open that is firing behind us. He's basically got it all locked up, and unless something crazy happens from Brad, and I don't think CVM is in day 2, so
yeah.
I don't want to count our eggs before they're hatched, but congratulations over to Brian, who is just putting on one heck of a run this year.
Yeah, I suppose the disqualification / roof collapses on him out is still in play technically, but assuming the conclusion draws to the tournament draws to a natural end, BBB should be locking up the Season 1 point invite.
And of course, it begs the question of what happens if he wins the Invitational and wins the Open Series points leader race. We want to make sure that we know exactly what happens with that. Fairly sure it does pass down on points over to Huey Jensen, but that situation is, we'll cross that bridge when we do get to it.
Yeah, that is what I was told yesterday, but again, we will make 100% sure before we make any certain declarations.
Which is kind of crazy to think that that's even in play, but here we are with it being in play because Brian has decided again that he is just not going to lose this weekend.
Yeah.
And really, why lose?
Why lose? And the other intriguing thing about it passing down in the event that BBD wins is that slot's still up in the air.
Yeah.
Brad Nelson's still playing in the Invitational,
yes.
and Huey has accumulated all the Season 1 points. He's in the Standard Open right now, playing in Season 2. Yeah. So things could get really weird if Brad makes a run here and BBD top 8s, because then Brad Nelson definitely has a horse in the race during the elimination rounds.
Yeah, he certainly does. As you did mention, it'll pass down to the second place in the Open Series points race. And right now that's Huey, but Brad is still in the tournament, and Brad is on his way to what looks to be a pretty good finish, even though he is sitting at 6-3, still within top 8 contention. Huey Jensen is out of the tournament, though. He's playing in the Standard Open. That is actually firing behind us to start Season 2 of the Open Series. So it could actually be Brad Nelson and Brian Bronwyn who end up getting the invites to the Players' Championships. But we'll see. As we are being informed right now, 580 players have come out to our Standard Open to start Season 2 off. So pretty awesome stuff there.
Healthy size Standard Open, especially when you factor in that many players who would otherwise be playing in the Standard Open are still in the Invitational. And we're looking at 10 rounds of Swiss today.
And of course, once we are done with the rounds of the Invitational, we're in round 10 of 16, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. We'll take a break, and then we'll actually join the Standard Open in progress. We'll start covering that up until the elimination rounds tonight. Then we'll come back tomorrow morning. We'll finish the elimination rounds of the Standard Open. We'll do the elimination rounds of the Invitational, crown a champion there, punch 2 tickets to the Players' Championship, and then we'll do some Legacy as well. So if you weren't able to join us yesterday, you did miss some awesome magic, but there's plenty more this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to see the start of Season 2 here, a whole new point race. And we're also, we're going to get more and more of the 8 invites at the end of the year start to shape up as we progress into Season 2 as well.
Before you know it, we're going to be in Columbus doing the Season 2 Invitational. It's going to come up much faster than you think. Trust me.
I know this now. I mean, Season 1 flew by.
Yeah. Crazy stuff here, as it looks like Merriam is going to take a mulligan. He is on the play after being infected by Blighted Agent. Tom Ross, always one of my favorite Magic players, because, he kind of does things his own way, doesn't play, your Espers of the world or your Bug Delver decks. He's been playing Blue-Green Infect for some time now. He top-8'd in Atlanta. That particular guy, I believe he made top 4 that weekend. Now he's playing in Standard. His Titan Strength, hyper-aggressive red-green aggro deck. I know that we sat down and did deck tech with him, so you can find out more about that on our coverage page. But I like that he's just a man who does things his own way. Yeah,
Tom and I are definitely singing off the same sheet of music. Yeah, that's for sure.
Merriam looks like he's going to take a mulligan again here, and I really do think that this is a very, very difficult matchup here for Ross Merriam on the left.
Well, certainly, being on the draw is already going to be a challenge. In Game 1, these decks are basically 2 ships passing in the night, especially if Ross has a Blighted Agent. Then it's just a pure race. Tom has a little bit of disruption, a couple soft counters. You saw Daze come up in the first game and Stifle as well. Yep. So he has some ways to interact, whereas Ross is basically just has to go as fast as possible in the face of Blighted Agent.
Yep.
Post-board, Ross has access to Abrupt Decay and discard spells. Tom Ross has access to Dismember, additional Force of Wills, Necropedes, and Submerges. Yep. So the gameplay could actually be a little bit more interactive than we saw in Game 1, but it's going to be challenging with Merriam on 5 cards.
And think about it. Ross had a turn 3 kill that game.
Yeah.
He just did his thing, and then Crater Hoof you off natural order. Normally that's enough to get the job done, and it was not enough, obviously, that game. As a timely Stifle there from Tom Ross. He's only got a couple copies of that in his deck, got the job done, so.
When I've watched Ross on camera, the 1 and 2 ofs have done some real work.
Ross going to play a Verdant Catacombs. He's going to go down to 19. And this is a Thoughtseize. We had a feeling he would board these cards in. You see the opening hand here for Ross. He's got 2 copies of Noble Hierarch. He's got 2 Inkmoth Nexus, a Vines of the Vastwood, a Submerge, and a Windswept Heath. So no Blighted Agent or Glistener Elf to take. And realistically, not any great targets for a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, talk about a Thoughtseize-proof hand here. I mean, Ross gets to, at minimum, keep 1 Noble Hierarch and have his Nexus. So, I'm sure taking Vines of the Vastwood or Submerge here can be fine, depending on exactly the texture of Ross's hand. But as far as a Thoughtseize-proof hand goes, this is about as close to that as you can get for Ross's Infect deck.
Yeah, and obviously I don't know the contents of Merriam's hand right now, but what do you select here? Probably Vines of the Vastwood, because it's the pump spell. If you take out Noble Hierarch, there's another one, Submerge. Not great, but also when you're mulligan, you can't really afford to be time walked, so it's a tough situation. Obviously, the cards that you would like to take, a perfect world would be Inkmoth Nexus, but Ross even has another one of those. So.
Right. It's just really hard for me to imagine beating Submerge on a 5-card hand. I understand the threat that Vines of the Vastwood represents here, but Submerge just seems like too much.
Ross agrees with you. He will take the Submerge at the cost of 2 life, but again, it's an Infect deck, so might as well be at 3,000.
Yeah, exactly. The Infect deck actually plays a lot of cards in their list that actually give life to the opponent.
Yeah.
Nature's Claim, most noteworthy.
Tropical Island, I'm going to be sacrificed.
Invigorate as well.
Here. Yeah,
Invigorate as well. Yeah.
Windswept Teeth is the card that facilitates that. Ross probably going to lead off with a Noble Hierarch here. We'll see, though.
And it looks like he has drawn Berserk this turn, so this could be another very fast game.
Sweet card.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's a sweet card. There is Berserk. Old school text on that one.
I believe this card may have been banned back in the early to mid 90s, so it has some history of doing powerful stuff. Although back then it was basically just berserking ball lightnings, which is way more innocuous than what Tom is up to.
Abrupt Decay is going to take down the Noble Hierarch. And there's the Inkmoth Nexus. There is another copy Noble Hierarch that Merriam didn't know about, passing the turn back. And there's your new school version of Berserk with some updated Oracle text and all that jazz.
Which actually removes some of the charm for my money.
Yeah, I like the A, of the old artwork, and B, just the very complicated text on the card.
Yeah, the absolute nonsense gobbledygook that is on that card. I'm a big fan.
Cradle will come into play here for Merriam as well. Ross going to draw his card. We know he has another Inkmoth Nexus. We know about the Vines of Astwood. Looks like he picked up a Force of Will for his turn. And if he does have a Berserk, I don't think he can get the job done this particular turn, but the next one he can.
Yeah, he's just a little short on mana right now, but he can set this up next turn.
The big problem here is that he doesn't have another blue card for that Force of Will. I say big problem, but you know, he is playing against an opponent who has mulligan quite a bit. He's just going to fire up the Inkmoth Nexus and come into the red zone. Exalted Trigger. Boom. There's the Vines. And Tom Ross knows that that's completely safe because realistically, from Elves, really the only card that can get the job in there is like a Dismember, and that's not a stock card in Elves.
Yeah, and you've also already seen Ross play a Thoughtseize and an Abrupt Decay this game, so how much more of this kind of stuff can you really have in his sideboard?
There's a Bayou, pass the turn back. Tom Ross is going to untap. He's going to take a draw. Another copy of Vines of Astwood in his grip. He's going to play out a Misty Rainforest. Activates. Maybe. We'll see. He's going to fire it up there this way. Attack here. Exalted Trigger. This is a Berserk.
And Tom is doing it this way so he can leave Vines in his hand as an insurance policy in case Ross has a removal spell there.
Absolutely. Ross will drop the 2 Cradles on the board and concede the game. Tom Ross moves on to 9-1 for my money. This is one of the few people you want to play in this tournament because he is playing 2 decks that are kind of goofy, off the wall, and really well situated right now in the metagame.
He is getting into people's kitchen this weekend,
yes,
for sure. And the Infect deck he has quite the resume with at this point. Again, a top 4 in Atlanta. Came very close to top 8, I believe, in St. Louis a few weeks prior to that. Doing very well in the Invitational. And, of course, Tom Ross's beatdown decks are quite innovative across all formats, and his standard offering no different this weekend.
And let's not forget, this is a player here on the right in Tom Ross that does have a Pro Tour top 8 in Honolulu in the mid-2000s, as well as a 9th place at Pro Tour San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, his amount of interest and investment in the Pro Tour has definitely dwindled in recent years, but